first time I heard him, it was like, I just thought, wow. You know, blew me away. I mean, it was like hearing Charlie Parker or something again, only now, today, you know, and more.
Gilad has what inspired me about jazz really in the first place, which is that it transcends the kind of the boundaries, that it's an outward-looking music, but it's filtered through a totally personal thing, and a really strong person can take stuff on, whether it's Arabic or Indian or French or whatever you like, Spanish influences, and it comes out absolutely that person, if they're strong enough. And Gilad's strong enough. He's very, very strong.
I'd known Gilad. Probably I was one of the first blocks, along with Chaz, to meet Gilad before he joined the band, and back in mid-90s, about 95.
One of the most enjoyable British bands in the world, I think we could safely say. It's an honour and a privilege to be a temporary blockhead. Please welcome Ian Drury and the Blockheads.
He was a colossus of a player, quite frightening in many ways, but eventually he got to join the band and start to play as a regular blockhead with us. And it was about the same time, he'd done a couple of years with Ian before Ian passed away, so he got really in the groove with it.
White face, black shirt, white socks, black shoes, black hair, white strap, lead, white gun, black sweet, gin, Vincent. Let the blue caps roll tonight. And the sun come forward in the Union Hall with the buckets there delight. Sweet, gin, Vincent, walking every town.
A lot of people can play fast, but he can play fast with a good deep sound at both ends. A lot of people play clarinet, but he can play it like Benny Goodman or like something in an Armenian bar. I mean, it's extraordinary.
October 1947. 2 shiploads of Jewish refugees from Europe attempt to land in Palestine, only to be turned away by the British and shipped to internment on Cyprus. The British mandate in Palestine was about to end, however, and the United Nations was debating the partition of Palestine between the Jews and the Arabs. The Middle Eastern Arabic nations were in violent opposition, and when Israel was voted a membership, they walked out. In May of 1948, a new Jewish state, Israel, was born in a bath of blood. Jewish troops routed Arab forces from the city of Haifa in the first of a series of battles that were to reverberate through the years. Meanwhile, on May 14, 1948, the new government, headed by David Ben-Gurion, is installed in Tel Aviv. Her flag became a symbol of hope in a troubled world.
עד שיום אחד בא פספוס אליי, הוא היה בן 6, 7, משהו כזה. כבר התחיל ללמוד בבית ספר, ואומר לי, אני רוצה לנגן בקלרינט. השתוממתי, ואמרתי לו, אתה לא יכול להתחיל ללמוד לנגן בקלרינט, אתה פצפון. אמרתי, תתחיל ללמוד חליל, תגמור את החוברת הראשונה של חליל, אני מיד קונה לך קלרינט. למחרת הלכתי לעבודה, אני חוזר מהעבודה בשעה 6-7 בערב, הוא אומר לי, אתה יכול לקנות לי קלרינט. היה שם שיר של מוצרט, פרוס כנפיך. אמרתי לו, נגן את זה. התחיל היה טי-רה-רה-רה-רה-רי-רה-רה. אני נדהמתי, אני לא האמנתי. למחרת בערב היה קלרינט בבית, גלעד התחיל ללמוד.
I was raised in a very Zionist family. I believed that Israel was our promised land. I believed in the Jewish collectiveness. It was a lot of fun growing up in Israel. It was a happy experience.
Gilad grew up in a very right-wing background. And military was something, you know, something adored.
מהיום שגלעד התחיל ללכת, ועוד קודם לכן, בדרך כלל בימי שבת, היינו יושבים יחד וסועדים עם הסבא שלו, ראובן ילין, שהיה מראשוני אצ"ל, כך שגלעד גדל בבית שבכל שבת היו ויכוחים פוליטיים סביב השולחן, עם התרכזויות, עם צעקות, כל אחד בדעה שלו, מתווכחים ושמחה וששון, בתוך אווירה נהדרת.
I regarded myself as an inherent part of a great historical project. I was 17 years old, late night, listening to radio before I go to sleep. In many countries, including in Britain, you play jazz in the night because it's really good for people to listen to jazz before they go to sleep because it is so boring. And then out of this intense boredom, there was one track that really shined out.
We are going to end this set with a tune that, to my opinion, it's probably the most beautiful arrangement on Bird with strings, Charlie Parker with strings. It's called Laura. We recorded it as well with Robert. I really love this tune, and it's not even political.
Laura is the face in the misty light.
They put it in start with strings. It was so warm, and this saxophonist was so brilliant and so vivid and so passionate, and I didn't know what it was. And I waited to hear what it was, and it was Charlie Parker. It was an album called Bird with Strings, and I really fell in love with it. In the morning, I rushed to Jerusalem, one and only music shop, and went to the jazz section. There was probably something like 12 vinyls. And I asked for Charlie Parker, and they had one Charlie Parker, and then I went home and I looked in the bus, I looked at the vinyl, and I was shocked. They were black.
Those eyes,
Until then, we were told in Israel that everything great is Jewish. So I initially thought it must be a black Jew or something.
Parker was a man who brought together the blues, the rural blues of the southern states of the USA, with the new urban life of the cities, in his case, Kansas City. And he managed to help create a form of jazz, bop, which based itself on the blues, but which had incredible new energy and sounds and mischievous approaches to rhythm. In a way, it seems to me that may well have happened to Gilad in his years growing up in Israel and having to deal with the conflicts and contradictions and the inhumanity which he saw around him, against which he reacted.
I joined the army in 81, but in 82, it was the Lebanon War.
The Israeli army was something that, it was like people were praying for so many years, to get to this stage of being an Israeli soldier.
I was really enthusiastic about the idea of serving my army, going to the IDF. I was even enthusiastic about the possibility of dying on the Jewish altar, I thought about all those young girls sobbing on my open grave. Extremely libidinal.
השירות הצבאי של גלעד התחיל בתזמורת. לאחר מכן גלעד התנדב להיות חובש קרבי והלך לקורס. במלחמת שלום הגליל הראשונה הוא הסתובב בלבנון.
And as it happened at the time of the Lebanon War, I spent some time in Lebanon and I saw a lot of blood. And I saw a lot of Israeli soldiers injured, but I saw a lot of Syrians as well and Palestinians.
וחזר הביתה והודיע, ראיתי דברים שלא אותם לימדו אותנו.
The most devastating experience that I had was actually when I managed to settle in the military band. We had a concert in Ansar. Ansar was basically a concentration camp on Lebanese soil. And what I saw there, thousands of Palestinians behind barbed wires, burned in the sun.
In southern Lebanon, some 20 kilometers from the coast, the Israelis have put up a special camp to hold PLO prisoners. It appears that some 3,000 to 4,000 men are held here at any given time, and the International Red Cross are now allowed access to them. Today, a convoy went in with supplies for the men. And of course, this gave Red Cross officers an opportunity to see for themselves how the prisoners are being treated, which was more than we were allowed to do. We were kept firmly outside and had to rely on what we were told. We were told the prisoners live tent to a tent, that they are allowed access to water and vegetables, that they are given meat, soap, and that winter clothes and blankets are now being made ready in case the men are still here when the summer ends. This special camp was set up 3 weeks ago. The Israelis don't consider any of those they hold here as prisoners of war, rather as terrorists who they say they'll bring to trial in due course for terrorist offenses. Desmond Hamill, ITN, Ansar, in southern Lebanon.
We were surrounded by concrete cubes with very small metal bars, and I was sure that these were for the dogs. I asked the commander, this tourist guide, how can they even contemplate of putting dogs into these places? And he told me that these were not for dogs, these were the solitary confinements, they were for Palestinians, and if you put a Palestinian, hardcore Palestinian terrorist in one of those, he becomes a Zionist in 24 hours. I saw myself in uniform, in Israeli uniform, walking on a paved way, and I realized for the first time in my life that in that situation, I was the Nazi. They were the Jews. I realized for the first time that I flipped, that all this Holocaust indoctrination had led me to see myself or to look at the situation from an ethical point of view rather than from a Zionist point of view. And it became clear to me that I really didn't want anything to do with the Zionist war machine.
We have met in '86. I just finished my own army service, and Gilad was a couple of years after, I think, his army service, and we were very young, very, very young. I didn't know Gilad at the time when he was in the army. I can only relate to this part of his past from what I heard from him. I think that this was basically the turning point in his life, from wanting to become a hero to become an artist, a musician.
One day, can't you see, you little fuck, that your boyfriend is gay? Why don't you do something better with your time and bring some food to Safta, live in Hockenheim? Ima and Kipa and Mom and a yarmulke gum. Ima and Kipa and Mom and a yarmulke gum.
עכשיו, אני מבין שאתה עושה דוקטורט עכשיו בחוץ לארץ? בפילוסופיה. בפילוסופיה, על?
מה הנושא שאני מתעסק בו? אידיאליזם, רומנטיסיזם גרמני.
מודרניזם?
מודרניזם, פוסט-מודרניזם, כמובן.
זה פוסט-מודרניזם?
יש שאלה, אם יש פוסט-מודרניזם.
אתה מנגן בלונדון?
כן.
עם מי?
ניגנתי איזה שיר אחד.
כן.
עם נגנים בינוניים, ועם נגנים ידועי שם, אני מאמין.
מה זה בינוניים? בארץ יש נגנים יותר טובים?
אני חושב שבמדינת ישראל מבחינת מוזיקאים יש בה כוחות אדירים. כוחות אדירים שלא מגיעים לא למיצוי ואף לא לחצי מיצוי, כי המוזיקה בכלל באופן עקרוני דועכת אל תאומות שגרר לא יחלצנה.
אז מה לדעתך באמת עוצר את היצירה בארץ בתחום המוזיקה? למרות שאני לא מסכים איתך, אני חושב שבארץ דברים נפלאים.
יש דברים עכשוויים, אני יכול להגיד להזכיר, לספור על אצבע אחת. אבי, כן. ו' וי' ואותיות רגילות. ב'.
We don't need an event to change our mind. It's something that grows, and then it comes to a minute, to a point that you don't want it anymore.
It still took me 10 years to leave the country for good with a clear attempt never to go back. I'll never visit Israel. I will visit the land when it is Palestine.
I could feel, that it was too much for him to be surrounded with all this mediocrity.
For me, Palestine is a land, Israel is just a state. And this state will disappear, inshallah, soon.
אני לא הייתי מגדיר את זה כי גלעד הגלה את עצמו. אבל מצד שני גם אף אחד לא הגלה אותו. גם מבחינת התפתחות, גם מהבחינה המוזיקלית, וגם מבחינה של חופש הדעות. וגלעד הגיע למסקנה שהוא איננו מעוניין יותר לחזור למדינת ישראל. הוא הגיע למסקנה הזאת, ואיתה הוא חי, ואני חי עם זה טוב, משום שבאיזשהו מקום אני מבין אותו.
When I came to Britain, I started to realize many more things about Israel, many more things about Jewish identity and Jewish lobbying, and I was pushed to the wall. I'm responsible for every Palestinian who lives in Gaza and every Palestinian who live in diaspora. I may not be the only one who is responsible, but I'm definitely complicit in this crime. I was born in Israel. I was part of this ethnic cleansing project, and I take responsibility. I take responsibility.
For some reason, he does take it personally. It is his way to go through a process of self-correction.
Because of the origins of jazz and the people who played it, it's been a story of the struggle for justice, for the struggle against racism, for unity, for peace, against war, against all forms of oppression.
I thought what I want to do, to take all this beautiful Jewish music, and to Palestinize it. I thought this is such a brilliant idea.
He called me and said, I want to do this new band, but I want it to be something different.
Jazz is a music of syncretism. It brings people and cultures together from enormously heterogeneous backgrounds and roots, fuses them together. The musics of their peoples, of their origins, and of the hopes for their futures all come together in the music of jazz. And I find very strong elements of that in the music of Gilad Atzmon.
We did our first record, I think, in the beginning of 2000, and started to play around gigs wherever we could. Gilad and myself wanted to create music that we are connected to. We wanted to combine something that is natural to us with the language of jazz and with the language of jazz improvisation.
This band is called the Orient House Ensemble. The Orient House was the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority in Jerusalem. There were arrests daily, and by now nobody knows what is the Orient House. Everybody thinks that it's a band. No, but it was a Palestinian institute. The new album is called The Tide Has Changed, because I do believe that the tide has changed. Because I do believe that more and more people are now more attuned to the Palestinian plight.
I told Gilad from the beginning, listen, it's all great, but, leave me out of this. I want to play music, I want to play my drums. I want to think about that all the time. And he accepted that.
Well, it's always about Zion. Zionism, the Jewish problem, and the word Jew is used quite a lot. I mean, in fact, didn't we put a blanket ban on him, mention him?
Well, some of the Jews in the band did.
And another gig, it may have been the same one, he said, some people say, I shouldn't mix politics and music. He said, in that case, to hell with music. And as a musician, I thought that was, as a musician as good as he is, I thought that was a wonderful thing to say.
Over an ocean away, like salmon, turning back for night to the delta with the rivulets tumbling down, glide over sand, around the rocks, back through the wavering wheat and the dirt in the way, river snow on the route along the way over gravel.
I never talk about politics. I hate politics and I despise politicians of all types. People say about myself that I'm an anti-Semite. It's exactly the same thing. I really hate everyone equally. So. This is part of my book launch tour. I think that we are doing something like 45, 50 or 60 events in the UK.
We're here as anti-Zionist, pro-boycott campaigners, Jews and non-Jews, to point out, to explain to the people going to this meeting that if you want to support the boycott campaign, then you have to be very critical of racist ideas coming into this movement.
It was wonderful to be born in Israel. It is wonderful to be raised in Israel as a Jew, because you really believe that you are a chosen person.
The first signs that this was going to be different actually came from Gilad, who said that there were people that were more or less running an ongoing and continuous campaign against him.
What does this say? Read what it says. Read what it says.
I thought that Gilad might be exaggerating the threat just because most artists with an artistic temperament have a tendency to overdo their own self-importance, which I consider harmless and quite endearing.
Have you ever allowed yourself to see yourself chosen? It's great. You should give it, do it for 1 day or 2 days, because if you do it kind of continuously, it can become really a dangerous experience, because you start to become abusive to others, sometimes even towards nations. My first and second book took me 2 weeks each to write. It took the proofreaders probably 6 months, you know, because I could hardly speak or write in English at the time. This book took me 12 years to write. In the last 12 years, I wrote around 10,000 pages about the subject. This book is a crude attack on identity politics.
I have read enough of his stuff over the last couple of years to make me puke. And I know that he says the same thing over and over again because I've leafed through the book and I've turned to random pages and it's the same stuff.
This is The Guardian, dated 26th of September by Andy Newman. The trouble is that Atzmon has often argued that the Zionist oppression of the Palestinians is attributable not to the bellicose politics of the Israeli state, but to Jewish lobbies and Jewish power.
No, I'm not operating as a Jew, but she is operating as a Jew. Do you operate as a Jew? I'm not Jewish.
It was a real surprise when my managing editor and wife approached different journalists asking them whether they wanted to come and debate with Gilad, and the responses from some of them were really quite savage.
The Jewish Chronicle, which I'm going to come back to in a moment, because it's very fascinating, opens by saying, so this was, note the date, by the way, 23rd of September, okay? So a couple of weeks ago. A US academic who co-wrote a controversial book about the Israel lobby has praised a new book by the Jewish anti-Semitic writer Gilad Atzmon.
Did anyone here who pickets and call me an anti-Semite or whatever, did you read Gilad Atzmon?
I haven't read the whole thing, but I've seen enough bad quotes to make me know.
No, you saw quotes. Did you read my papers?
No, I haven't read it all.
No, you don't have to be aggressive. I'm not aggressive with you. You realize that those quotes do not represent what I think, what I say, and in most cases, they are not even my quotes. When you study a philosopher, do you read them by quotes or do you read them?
Well, I concentrate on the quotes.
Really? If you really take yourself seriously, the minimum you should do next time is to go and read. You shouldn't get quotes provided to you by an Asbarap or by an Israeli propaganda unit.
He says Israel is Jewish and that's all that matters. Tell me he doesn't.
Maybe he does, but
yes, he does.
So much to you. That's what Netanyahu is saying.
That's why it matters. It is a Zionist argument. Can't you see that? The Zionists say these people, you, all of us, are anti-Semitic. Gilad comes along and says, yes, we're anti-Semitic. Hooray. So the Zionists say, we're right, you're wrong. Goodbye. No Palestinian rights. Forget it.
I think The Wandering Who reads a lot like a novel, a story. I can see how every criticism leveled at it could be supported by something in the text, because the text is a text that is almost begging to have aspects of it quoted out of context. It's been deliberately written like that. It's an inflammatory, provocative, aggressive attack on Zionism that I think needs that kind of attacking. The fact that I read this book and couldn't find anti-Semitism in it, it seemed to be besides the point, as nobody who was attacking us had read the book either.
I wrote to Alan Hart. I didn't actually get a reply, but indirectly again it was confirmed he wouldn't be appearing. I didn't want people who do have credibility on the Palestine issue to be sitting down with someone who's anti-Semitic and thereby discrediting the cause of Palestine solidarity.
But my dear Gilad, in your Jewish analysis, if I understand it, and I do say if, Zionism is what it is because Jews are what they are. People who, generally speaking, regard themselves as chosen and superior to all others, and who, because of this arrogance or conceit, have brought disasters upon themselves. Now, to what extent, if at all, have I understood what you really think and believe?
We are going to play a short tune. It is called Refuge. We dedicate it to the Palestinian refugees all over the world. There are millions of them. And this is about the right of return of the people who belong to the land, and the land belongs to them, and to them only, actually. Thank you so much.
I make a very clear distinction between Jews, the people, Judaism, the religion, and Jewishness, the ideology. For me, Jewishness is different forms of supremacist ideology fueled by chosenness. Jewish suffering is more crucial and devastating than any other suffering.
Atzmon believes and writes that almost anybody who is in any way, even partially, slightly, tangentially Jewish, who doesn't believe in his form of anti-Zionism, is therefore a tribal Jew.
Atzmon accuses pro-Palestinian Jews of placing limits on the movement and of trying in a certain sort of conspiratorial way to direct the movement. Now, I know that there are many people in the movement who share the opinion, which is general throughout the West, that Israel needs to exist as a Jewish state, should exist as a Jewish state. And there are many Jews and others in the movement who don't want to criticise that fundamental fact.
His proposition that he's criticising some sort of ethnic exclusivity is, as far as I can see, a complete misunderstanding of Jewish history and is in any event drawn from tropes, hoary myths and straightforward ignorance as promulgated by anti-Semitism of a very recognisable kind.
This was the last time that I played in a Jewish festival because I expressed what I thought and they didn't like it. And here tonight, 10 years, and we are playing in the heart of Jewish London. Yeah, you can't go more. We are in, I think, Golders Green, aren't we, or something like that.
The logic of what he says and the pernicious influence that he has in our movement, and young Palestinians listen to him and say, hey, there's this guy who's used to serve in the IDF and now he's turned against Israel, and he says that the Holocaust is, we should review the Holocaust. You look at the comment threads, you look at the sort of stuff that people put on discussions about Israel and Palestine. Holocaust denial is in there, and he is a main conduit for that pernicious notion.
Once you start to speak and to criticize Israel, all the people, even let's say Jews from some people from Jews for Justice for Palestine. I had many of them contacting me, don't publish for this, don't publish for that. And they are saying that they are Jews for Justice for Palestine. I'm very sad to say this, but this is the fact.
We are in a position to kosher, to give a stamp of approval to the whole movement by saying, look, it is fine to support the Palestinians, it is fine to criticise Israel, it is fine even to challenge the nature of the Jewish state, because here we are Jews, we're doing it.
I mean, isn't it clear that what we're dealing with here is an absolutely grade A narcissist who wants to be at the centre of everybody's thinking and the centre of everybody's lives? And it isn't sufficient for him to be highly regarded as a jazz player, but he has somehow to be regarded for more than that. He wants people talking about him. The thing that is really getting to him right now, and one of the reasons why I was reluctant to do this interview, is that he sees this very fact of me appearing here, saying what I'm saying now, as a kind of vindication of his desire to get at the centre of people's lives. He's a phallic imperialist.
In Israel, you're not taught the history of Palestine. What you tend to believe, what you learn, the curriculum is very basic, that the Palestinians actually left voluntarily. I started to learn about it, and I realized that this wasn't the case. There were Israeli, racially oriented laws that are not different from Nuremberg laws that didn't allow the Palestinian code to come back. We have few Jews in this movement who are very vocal, and some of them, by the way, are doing an incredible job. But they always say, as a Jew, as a Jew, as a Jew. I want to write a book as a. You know, we have this, it's very common. As a Jew, as a woman, as a black. A few of my hero Jews started to say, we are entitled to say what we want to say because my mother was in Auschwitz. Wonderful, but I said, but my mother wasn't in Auschwitz. And in 2002, it was too late to send her. They always stopped the operation. Without the Holocaust, without Hitler, Israel wouldn't get away with the scale of atrocities it inflicts on Palestinian people. So the Palestinians are the last victims of Hitler.
We are going to play a blues to you. We are going to invite, as I said, my favorite rock and roll violin player.
Be merciful.
Yeah, why? Why? No, I will be as merciful as a Jew can be. It's not allowed. Anyway.
I'll fucking share the mercy with you.
when you throw a rocket on a settlement in Israel, it's not being photographed. You cannot see the mother trying to defend her child the whole night and have a sleepless night. Did you ever saw on television a sleepless night? I have much respect for you, Mr. Prime Minister, but I must put things as they really are. Whatever we do is being photographed. Whatever they do, nobody sees.
This has been a powerful and passionate debate. It's a debate that could go on tonight for hours, but we've already gone well past our closing time. Mr. Prime Minister, with apologies to Prime Minister Erdogan.
1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
Well, you know.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay.
1 minute.
But I'm going to hold you to the 1 minute, please.
Sayın Perez, benden yaşlısın.
President Perez, you are older than I am, and you have a very strong voice. I feel that you perhaps feel a bit guilty, and that's why perhaps you have been so strong in your voice, so loud. Well, you kill people. I remember the children who died on beaches, and I find it very sad that people applaud what you have said, because there have been many people who have been killed. And I think that it is very wrong, and it's not humanitarian to applaud any actions which have had that kind of a result. I've taken many notes. Unfortunately, there's no time to respond to all of them. But I will just say two things.
We can't start the debate again, please. We just don't have time.
Excuse me. Sözümü kesmeyin.
Gilad Atzmon says that the Israeli barbarianism is way beyond what it should be.
A few hours later, I came home and I had something like 6,000 emails.
I can only think that the Turkish Prime Minister actually hadn't the faintest idea who Gilad Atzmon was. That he just knew that this person was a relatively famous international performer of music. And he'd picked up on the idea that he was an Israeli and a Jew, and therefore somehow or other in a better position than other people to make a judgment about Israel was more interesting.
I throw up my hands in disbelief. The idea that someone as buffoonish and ignorant as Atzmon can be taken as a serious player in public debate, not in the United Kingdom, but in the Middle East, is not so much astonishing as nightmarish.
It was a depressing moment because it testified to Erdogan's ignorance at that moment, but it was a passing moment.
Why does he have such an influence? Well, for the same reason that conspiracy theories generally have some sort of audience on the internet and on the fringes of political life. They are simple explanations, and the durability of Jewish conspiracy theories is a well-known facet of political debate.
This book is suggesting that there are no Jewish conspiracies. Everything is done in the open.
One of the things you say is that while in the past an anti-Semite was someone who hates Jews, nowadays it's the other way around. An anti-Semite is someone the Jews hate.
And they wouldn't even bother to point out to you what was so upsetting, because you're convinced that you are telling them the truth. Listen, what is happening in Israel is quite outrageous. It's oh, it's an anti-Semite.
I don't so much accuse Atzmon of being an anti-Semite as merely state it. It's beyond argument. He is a classical anti-Semite. His ideas, insofar as one can term them that, are drawn from the from the iconography and the literature of European anti-Semitism. He's a racist, he's an anti-Semite.
How can you be an anti-Semite if you want your own people to live in harmony and humanism with the other people of your own country, particularly when you play the music of your own country?
Gilad is not anti-Jews. I was born as a Jew, and I don't feel that Gilad is anti-me or anything against me. Gilad's wife was born as a Jew. Gilad's children are Jewish. Asaf, who used to be a drummer, is Jewish. So how can you say about Gilad that he's anti-Jew or anti-Jewish or anti-Semite, as these people say?
His anti-Semitism is not dangerous to Jews. Atzmon has no party behind him. He doesn't have a group of thugs with him. He is a particular voice. He doesn't represent any danger to Jews. What he does do is represent a danger to Palestinians, because the main argument that Zionists come back with every single time is if you support the Palestinians, you are automatically anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish.
The accusation of anti-Semitism, it's a spin. It's reassure their origin in a place they don't belong to. Do you understand how vicious and sinister it is? While when you call me an anti-Semite as a Jew, you actually reassure your origin in a place you have nothing to do with.
We are going to play to you some music, our interpretation of Bird with Strings. If you don't recognize the music, it's okay. If you don't enjoy it, it's also okay. You know, it's jazz. You're not supposed to enjoy it. That we have started with the first tune. We always start with the first tune. It's very important for us just to keep things in order, you know. And by the way, next year we are going to do a tribute to Murdoch, you know. You know. Yeah, you're all so happy, you know, but you still buy the Times, you know.
There was time, and it was actually pretty much the majority of our time together, that I wasn't fully able to understand what is it that he's so passionate about. We used to have a lot of arguments. I felt that he was very single-sided and unbalanced, the way he saw things.
She used to go to Israel every year, something that I was rather disturbed by, but I never tried to stop her.
I have my family there and friends, and it was very, very emotionally tricky to handle.
She couldn't see where I was going, but the last two Israeli wars made it very clear to her.
There's a lot of things that I question and that I'm not sure about.
I think that she supports me now.
I met her very, very many years ago. She was really, really young. It was almost illegal. We met in a Jewish Hasidic music festival. I was very impressed with her performance. I thought I better marry her and shatter her career. I'm going to introduce her. She's my wife, Gilad Atzmon.
I try not to think too much about, death threats, and whenever Gilad gets a bunch of hate emails. I don't know, I try to carry on living. I'm really trying not to be affected by it. And I try to make sure that the kids are not being affected.
Even if they hurt me physically, this would be a great victory. I got today at least 40 death threats, but I decided to bring a camera crew that if they decide to do it tonight, we will have it documented.
حرية 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 حرية.
My name is Giuliano and I am the director of the Freedom Theater in Jenin refugee camp.
Peace report, Palestinians, artists, peace activists worldwide are mourning the loss of a leading figure in Palestinian creative nonviolence resistance. Giuliano McCartney, the head of a theater for Palestinian children, was killed on Monday in the West Bank town of Jenin.
It's something I'll never forget. The moment he just started to, when we
killed Giuliano
said Manzanera, and
Giuliano was murdered. Yeah, that's right.
No!
Yeah. It's becoming a nice place.
Oh my God.
Some of you are concerned with my ideas, and I think that you are more than welcome to come upstairs and to express your concerns. This is the only way to elaborate on some crucial issues. Thank you so much.